Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome here to Five Mountain Hardware in Chickasha. We've rebuilt and reopened since the flood. And Congressman Barletta is introducing some legislation to try to help victims of the flood out like myself. So I'm not going to take any more time. I'll turn it over to Congressman Barletta.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Wayne and his wife Sue for allowing us to come here today. And I think the fact that we're having this press conference here in this hardware store is a story in itself. You know, last year in September, when the devastating floods from Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee hit, Chickasha was one of the hardest hit towns in northeastern Pennsylvania. And I could remember coming here and literally leaving thinking that this town will not exist any longer. Wayne and Sue were especially hit hard as they were remodeling this property to open up a hardware store when the floods came. And the story, I believe, is that after all of the devastation, Wayne and Sue decided to continue and open up this hardware store after the floods had hit here. If they did not open up their business here, if they would have walked away, the people here in Chickasha would be forced to drive either to Berwick or Wilkes-Barre or to Hazleton to find a hardware store. So the fact that they persevered in spite of what happened, I believe, is a great American story. I was personally affected by the flooding, watching these kind of stories and seeing this from town to town to town as I drove through our district, seeing so many homes and businesses totally devastated. People literally carrying their life's possessions out to the sidewalk and dumping them out in the street. And you know, the memory remains in my mind as you could hardly even see the buildings as we walked through so many towns, as everybody's property, everything that they owned would literally line the streets. And I wanted to do something about it. I felt that I had an opportunity being in Washington to do what I can to help the people back home. So I introduced the Disaster Loan Fairness Act because what I found is when I went back to Washington and came here to see how I could help the people back home, what the federal government would do, for example, for Wayne or any other business or homeowner, is that if he can get credit somewhere else, the federal government would have loaned him money at 6% interest. And if you couldn't get credit elsewhere, they would have loaned him money at 4% interest, which I felt was unacceptable. After doing some research, I found out that the United States gave the country of Pakistan $215 million for flood disaster relief in their country. And the people in Pakistan, the interest rate they had to repay was 0% interest. In fact, they didn't even have to pay the money back. But yet we were charging Americans and American businesses 6% interest, which I felt we needed to change the way we deal with disasters here in the United States. So I introduced the Disaster Loan Fairness Act a year ago, which would lower the interest rates. And for the past year, I have been fighting in Washington to get this bill to the floor for a vote. And after realizing that it was going to be very difficult to get that bill as it stood voted on in the House of Representatives, I realized that we needed to readjust the bill so that it can become a law. So what we did is we actually changed the interest rates from a set interest rate from my old bill to now a market-based interest rate, which would be lower than any interest rate that the government would give out. So if Wayne could get, if Wayne did not have credit, the interest rate the federal government would loan money to him would be half of what the market rate is. So For example, currently the market rate is about 4%. Wayne would get a loan at 2% interest. If he can get credit elsewhere, the federal government would loan him money at 3/4 of what the rate is. So basically, today it might be around 3% interest. The rate could never be higher than 4%. It would be capped at 4%. So as interest rates may go up in years to come, the interest rate in my bill would never go above 4%. What I feel is one of the best parts of the bill is that we have made it retroactive to January 1st of last year. So anyone who received a loan through SBA will get a rebate from the federal government when my bill is passed after they apply for the new rates. So all of the people here in northeastern Pennsylvania and throughout the country will be able to get a rebate from the federal government when our bill is passed and their loans are approved. Now the good news and the reason for the press conference today is not only that have I introduced the bill, I expect this bill to go to the floor for a vote in the House of Representatives in September, which I'm very excited because it will be the 1-year anniversary of the devastating floods here. So not only do I expect it to go to a vote, I'm very, very optimistic that this bill will be passed. It has bipartisan support. In fact, 3 of the co-sponsors on my bill are Democrats. Tim Holden and 2 Democrats from California have signed on as the original co-sponsors of my bill. We also did enough homework to find out that 265 districts in the United States have been impacted by presidentially declared disasters, and that's what needs to happen for the loan bill to go into effect, which means that there are 265 votes that I'm hoping to be able to get from other members, Democrat and Republican, whose districts have been impacted and whose constituents will also be able to get a rebate from the federal government at the lower interest rates. And you know, for me, the bottom line is that never again, when disaster strikes, will we take the approach that businesses such as Wayne and Sue's here can either choose to go out of business or simply go out on their own to find help and not have the federal government to be here so that he could open up and so that other businesses can open up. And this doesn't only apply to businesses. My bill will also apply to homeowners, to people who have lost their life's possessions as well. So the bill will cover anyone who has been affected by a presidentially declared disaster.